Welcome to the Halloween Marathon of 2022.
What was cool about owning the TurboGrafx-16 when it came out was the fact that you can actually tell somebody, hey, I own the TurboGrafx-16, and then you would just wait and watch for their reaction. Another cool part about owning one is that there were a lot of games that you could not find anywhere else other than the TurboGrafx-16. Dungeon Explorer is one of those titles, and although many sequels would follow years after on different consoles, the original could only be found on that small and somewhat obscure 16-bit system. But was it any good? And most importantly, is it a great title to play during the Halloween season? Let's find out. So the game has you playing as one of 8 different explorers or characters, each of them with different attributes and different classes, as you try to find a stone that has been buried deep within the labyrinth or dungeons, and that is reported to have the ability to destroy the evil alien king called Natas. Natas. Something about that name. Nope. Thought I had something. Moving on. If you progress far into the game, you can also unlock a password or passwords that will let you have access to 2 more classes, one of them being a princess and the other a hermit. That brings the total up to 10. Obviously, the gameplay and the overall look of the game are an inspiration taken from the game Gauntlet. But Dungeon Explorer took this a little bit further and implemented RPG-like elements, more statistics, and obviously more classes. And luckily, the developers implemented a very easy and simple password system. And it makes it a lot easier for you to come back to the game and pick up where you left off. Now, here's the real big kicker with this game. You can play by yourself, sure, but you can also play with up to 4 friends. Well, the only setback is that you had to have 4 other friends with a TurboGrafx, which is the equivalent of you hitting the lotto 2 weeks in a row, and owning the TurboTap accessory, which allowed you to hook up 5 controllers in total to the console. This is why I mentioned in my last video that I used to love playing this game, but I don't feel that I took full advantage of it since I never had 4 other friends with a TurboGrafx system, and I didn't even own the TurboTap either, because why would I? Nobody I knew had the TurboGrafx. I was the only dumbass. Because I'm sure nothing could have been a lot more fun than grabbing 4 other friends and tackling this game together on a nice weekend afternoon. This game was one of the few titles on the TurboGrafx-16 that took advantage of this feature. And I think had they marketed the console overall much better in the States and pushed the 5-player simultaneous feature onto more games, they might have done a little bit better. There is one drawback to this feature, and that is that all players share lives, meaning whatever number of lives that you have left are shared by every single player. Another cool addition to this series is that it had bosses that you must clear before you continue in the game. This was another improvement over the Gauntlet series. The overall music and the soundtrack of the game is extremely moody, but it's nothing worth getting excited about in terms of 16-bit soundtracks. Games like Revenge of Shinobi and Ghouls and Ghosts were making much better use of the 16-bit power in bringing some amazing music to the scene. However, the tracks that are available on this game go great with the overall ambience, and it fits perfectly in giving you that sense of dread and fear as you descend into the dungeons below. So for the graphics, this game gets a 6. It's just a cut above a really superb NES game. The overall graphics don't really make you feel like you're playing a 16-bit game, at least it didn't for me at the time that it was released. Most of the dungeons looked like they were rushed. Some of the overall visuals look pretty drab too, even for an early 16-bit title. I mean, just look at the colors here. The towns are as plain and as boring as they can be. There wasn't a lot of detail put into them, or the dungeons. Luckily, there's more to a game than just graphics, which brings me to the gameplay. I'll give it a solid 8. It has plenty of characters and different classes, each with their own attributes, which extends the replayability of the title. The password system is also user-friendly and nothing that is overly complicated. And it's a good thing too that you had an easy password, because the game, it's not easy at all, especially if you play it by yourself. You have very few hit points at the beginning, and you have to be very careful as you descend into the dungeons, because if you just get hit by one enemy a couple of times in a row, you are gone. Unless you're playing as the gnome or any of the characters that have a lot of hit points. Even then, that doesn't help very much. This is where the beauty of the 5-player simultaneous gameplay came in, because if you were lucky enough and you had other friends with a TurboGrafx system, that meant you can tackle this game with 5 players simultaneously, and that, I'm sure, would have been a lot of fun. Overall, this title gets a 7 on the Halloween meter. If you do decide to tackle this game on your own for a little bit of nostalgia, be prepared to have your ass kicked a couple times at the beginning, because you will be dying a lot. Good thing this game is fun. Alright, so we are almost at the end of this marathon. For day number 23, I'm going to be looking at an arcade title that mixed 2 genres into one to create a pretty cool franchise. Don't miss this one. Natas. Oh, now I get it. No, I don't.